Hey guys, welcome back to Cough Country News. It's Steve with your cannabis news. I know why you're here. I know what you need. You're hungry for that news and I want to feed you. So we're going to start off in New York, where they've been having a big problem with unlicensed pot shops, and now they're advertising online. Whoo, the dispensaries really don't like it. Then we're doing a new series called Strains of Yesterday, where we take a look at all the strains that got us to where we are today, and we start off with Acapulco GOLD. That's right. Is that Acapulco GOLD? And THCV is the new cannabinoid that's all the rage, but what is it about? Well, we're going to take a closer look, and I will tell you 5 things that you should know about THCV. And that's all coming to you right now on Cough Country News. Yeah!
No sticks, no seeds, just news.
From the Cough Country News Desk, it's Steve with your cannabis news.
New York opened the gate to legal cannabis and then proceeded to drop the ball hard on its regulatory game. And now, unlicensed pot shops have proliferated like cockroaches in the subway, and the state has been trying to swat them down, but it seems like they're fighting a losing battle. Those unlicensed shops have continued to thrive while taxed and regulated businesses have continued to struggle. And one place they are on equal footing is online. Industry groups have been screaming to the governor's office saying that these shops are listing themselves on Google and selling their illegal products on social media. They're utilizing paid advertisements on the platform to pull customers away from legal stores and tax dollars away from the state, and they must be stopped. In a letter to the governor, they said that these digital channels are helping the shops evade regulatory oversight and flood our communities with unlicensed stores and unregulated product. They need to be shut down for public safety and for the sake of the regulated market. Now, New York launched legal sales only 1 year ago, and it's been a mess ever since. Today, there's only 65 licensed dispensaries in the whole state that has almost 20 million people in it. So, of course, unlicensed shops started opening up on their own. In order to crack down on them, Governor Kathy Hochul started handing out all sorts of fines and penalties, hoping that would deter the growth of unregulated stores. But it turns out it wasn't. She handed out almost $25 million in fines, but no one is paying. They barely collected any of it. Shops are just staying open while they appeal the decision and tie it all up in court for months. And now those stores are paying Google to advertise for them. The letter to the governor's office said New York consumers trust the results of a Google search and are being misled on a daily basis by social media companies, search engines, mapping features, and review listings that direct unknowing consumers to unlicensed and illegally operating cannabis stores in New York State. And they want New York to sue Google and company to remove unlicensed shops from their platforms and have a verification process in place to buy advertising space. But this whole issue of illegal shops proliferating was because of the state's horrendous handling of rolling out of the legal program. Because of how they did it, they've been plagued with supply bottlenecks, price fluctuations, and non-existent distribution. The illegal market flourished simply because of the economics of supply and demand. The state wouldn't supply, so the people found a cheaper, faster way to access decriminalized cannabis. So now legal stores can't get ahead of the black market that's undercutting them and bleeding their profits dry and depriving the state of the taxes it so desires. So let's be real about this. This is not about public safety and regulation. This is about money and who is getting it. The industry is struggling to stay above water, and they pay a lot of money to the state to protect them. Their tax dollars guarantee that residents of that state come to them for their cannabis. And the government is always hungry for tax dollars, so they have to do something lest they get cut out of the deal. Guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with just a word from our sponsor, and we'll have more news for you in just a second.
This is cannabis. And this is cannabis. And this is cannabis. And this is cannabis. When you put them all together, you've got medicine.
Guys, thanks for sticking around. We got more news for you right now. Now, you might have a hard time finding it today, but Acapulco GOLD, the original connoisseur weed, was a defining legend in the 60s and 70s, even into the 80s. Its name was synonymous with primo weed for decades, and with such a universal upbringing, where did it go? Whatever happened to Acapulco GOLD? Acapulco Gold came from a sativa landrace that originated in Mexico. It was a strain that settled in the Guerrero Mountains east of Acapulco. The combination of the higher altitude, the long tropical days, and the Pacific winds that came together to create one of the legendary strains of the cannabis world. It was a super strong one, clocking in around 20% in the 70s when everything else was close to 5%. It was in such high demand that by the time Cheech and Chong immortalized it in song, "No sticks, no seeds that you don't need, Acapulco Gold is badass weed," Columbia University in New York had its own dedicated smuggling route just for the green gold that wound its way through Austin, Texas, all the way to the Northeast. But by 1967, the summer of love, Acapulco was being passed around as the primo bud in San Francisco, and it became a cornerstone of the counterculture movement at the time. Now, Gary Tovar said the gold color came from the natural conditions the strain was grown in. The wind off the Pacific Ocean would actually burn off some of the chlorophyll in the leaf and affect its flavor. And he's the man to know in the story of Acapulco Gold. Gary Tovar was the main guy running it across the border and satisfying the U.S.'s thirst for high-grade marijuana. But he wasn't just a smuggler, he was also a big concert promoter. And as it turned out, it's Acapulco Gold that launched music into the 80s. Gary's promotion company, Golden Voice, named after another strain of marijuana, was one of the main groups bringing British punk bands like the Sex Pistols over to the States, changing the direction of popular music in the U.S. forever. He was the very guy that jump-started the punk movement in America, and how could he afford to bring all those bands over here? That's right, you guessed it, through his sales of Acapulco Gold. He said he spent over $4 million of his profits smuggling the weed to push the punk scene forward. And he was so good at it, they didn't catch him until 1991 when, they sent him to prison for a couple years. But his company, Golden Voice, would go on to found the world-famous music festival Coachella that occurs every 2 weekends every year in California. Now, Acapulco Gold is a pure sativa, and it's known to have very energizing effects, but relaxing, leaving you clear-headed. It's got an intense, fruity flavor with a bit of spice to it, which makes sense since its main terpenes are myrcene, like you would find in mangoes, limonene, and beta-caryophyllene, like in black pepper. Now, because of how cannabis is grown today, not exposed to high-altitude Pacific winds, Acapulco Gold probably wouldn't have a golden color, even though purists say that's what gave it its flavor. And after decades of growing, different growers will have different strains of the original variations. But the original Acapulco Gold gave its genetics to the original skunk strains that started coming out around the 70s, considered the backbone of modern cannabis breeding, and some of the haze strains that came out at the time as well. So if you've ever smoked it or you've got a story about Acapulco Gold, let me know in the comments. I want to hear about it. THCV is having its moment in the spotlight, and folks, the position is well earned. It's got some unique traits that set it apart from its cannabinoid cousins, and it could wind up winning a spot in your marijuana repertoire. It's pretty hard to find, though, as not very many plants produce the cannabinoid in anything but trace amounts. In fact, several years ago, a group of strain hunters went traipsing through the backcountries of Africa trying to find a strain that produced just 1% of THCV, or tetrahydrocannabivarin. And one of their crew members actually died of malaria trying to find it. But fast forward a few years and we've been able to breed a few strains with boosted THCV production. One company, Phylos Genetics, has managed to produce a THCV dominant strain that's giving the scientific community a chance to take a closer look at the cannabinoid that has been waiting in the wings. So let's join them and look at 5 things that you should know about THCV. Number 1, it's an appetite suppressant. Earning the nickname diet weed, it actually has the opposite effect of delta-9 THC, the one we know and love. There's a cluster of nerves in the hypothalamus in the brain that has an influence on appetite. And it looks like when we consume THC, it bonds to the cannabinoid receptors there and starts the whole munchy effect going. When THCV is present in high enough levels, it bonds to those receptors, effectively blocking THC and the munchies from making its way into the brain. Number 2, for that very reason, there's also a lot of excitement around the cannabinoid's potential to treat diabetes and weight loss. While it's in the brain suppressing the appetite, it also upregulates energy metabolism, giving a slight boost to metabolic function in the body. It's been shown to reduce fasting glucose concentration in people with type 2 diabetes and ameliorates insulin sensitivity. Basically, it helps the whole thing stay in balance while reducing food intake and decreasing body fat, even preventing diabetes from onsetting in the first place. It even goes so far as to help repair cellular damage and cell death attributed to metabolic diseases like diabetes. For number 3, it's known to boost energy and focus. People also call it Weedarol, as it produces effects closer to amphetamines and ADHD medications than the sedative effects of THC. This definitely leans into the sativa effects of cannabis, but in a recent study, a group using THC and a group using THCV were compared. Now, both groups had increased activity, exercise performance, and motivation, but the THC-only group reported fatigue and hunger setting in, while the THCV group reported an energizing effect and a focused mental clarity, almost like a cup of coffee, making it the perfect daytime get-stuff-done cannabinoid. For number 4, it's less psychoactive than THC. It's still a psychoactive compound, of course, but when compared, THCV is like a low-powered sativa, providing energy and stimulation, but no euphoric ride, making it a great choice for novice cannabis users or those who aren't really looking for the intoxicating effects. They even found that when THC and THCV are combined, it would block and reduce some of the effects of THC, just like CBD would. For number 5, science has high hopes to use the cannabinoid to treat pain and inflammation. Since it can bond to the CB2 endocannabinoid receptors in the body, it was found to have anti-inflammatory properties, and when combined with CBD, shows promise treating muscle hyperalgesia or a hypersensitiveness to pain in the nerves of the muscles. So that's 5 things that you should know about THCV. If you've ever tried it, tell us about it in the comments. And tell me about your experience and how it helped you. All right, guys, that's all the news we got for you today. Thank you so much for checking us out. Be sure you like, subscribe, and follow Cough Country News so you don't miss none of this. And check us out next time, where it's always no sticks, no seeds, just news.